Hi there, and welcome back to Haunting Vales. Tonight's story begins inside a grand old hotel, where every room tells a story, except one. Room 313 had been locked for weeks. No bookings, no staff allowed inside. Until one morning, the manager swore he heard footsteps and a voice calling for service. When the door was finally opened, the room was empty except for a suitcase that didn't belong to anyone alive. Hercule Poirot is called to investigate, and what he finds inside that room isn't just a mystery. It's a secret that refused to check out. Who was the guest that never left? And what truth was left behind, waiting in the silence? Stay with us till the end. And if you love mysteries that linger long after the lights go out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Haunting Vales. Chapter 1. The room that should be empty. The waves crashed against the cliffs below, slow and deliberate, like the heartbeat of something ancient that refused to die. The Sea Cliff Hotel stood above them, a grand old building with whitewashed walls and windows that seemed to watch the ocean with weary eyes. Its best days were gone, but it clung to the coastline with the pride of a place that once knew importance. Hercule Poirot, the great Belgian detective, though no one called him that anymore in England, had come seeking rest. His doctor had told him to escape the noise of London, to find calm. So here he was, in a quiet seaside village where nothing ever seemed to happen. Or so he thought. The Seacliff Hotel was nearly empty that October evening. The season was over, the tourists had gone, and only a few guests remained. An elderly couple from Surrey, a writer who kept to himself, and a woman who sat by the fireplace every night, staring into the flames as if they were whispering something only she could hear. Poirot checked in under a quiet drizzle. The receptionist, a nervous young man with pale hair, gave him a polite smile. "Room 17, sir," he said. "A fine view of the sea. Though, I should warn you, some of the guests find it a bit drafty." Poirot nodded. "I will survive a little wind, I think." He took his key, climbed the creaking staircase, and walked down a narrow corridor lined with old portraits. The faces seemed to follow him as he passed. When he reached room 17, he paused. The air felt colder there, somehow. The carpet faded, the wallpaper lifting at the edges. But Poirot thought little of it, until he stepped inside. It was a comfortable room, a large bed, an armchair by the window, and a desk with a single lamp. He placed his suitcase down and walked toward the window. Outside, the sea stretched into darkness, and the lighthouse far away blinked once every 15 seconds, a steady, lonely pulse. He was about to sit when a sound broke the quiet. A door shutting. Not his own, but close. Very close. Poirot opened his door and looked out into the corridor. No one. The hallway was empty, the lights dim. Then he noticed something. The door to room 16, next to his, was slightly open. He hesitated. From inside came the faintest sound, a soft scrape, like a chair being moved. Poirot stepped closer. He knocked gently. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. "Pardon, is anyone there?" he called out, though without any trace of an accent now. His tone was clear, British polite. Still nothing. He reached for the handle. It turned easily. Inside, the room was dark. Only the dim blue of the sea filtered through the curtains. Poirot stepped in slowly. His shoes made no sound on the carpet. There was a smell, faint but unmistakable, something metallic, something wrong. He turned on the lamp. The bed was neatly made. The wardrobe stood open, empty. A suitcase sat by the desk, a black leather one with a tag that read, "Mr. Jonathan Pierce, London." Poirot frowned. A guest, then. But where was he? He moved closer to the desk. On it lay a folded newspaper, a silver pen, and a cup of coffee, still half full. The liquid was cold, a thin film forming on top. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry. Or had not left at all. Then Poirot saw it. On the carpet, near the armchair, a dark stain, almost invisible in the weak light. He knelt. It was dry, but unmistakable. Blood. He stood up slowly, his mind sharpening. So, he murmured, "Room 16 is not as empty as it seems." A sound behind him made him turn. The door moved slightly, though no breeze came through. Poirot stepped forward and pushed it fully open. The corridor beyond was silent. He left the room, closing the door gently behind him, and went downstairs to the lobby. The receptionist was at the desk, writing in a ledger. "Excuse me," Poirot said. "Could you tell me, please, the gentleman in room 16? Mr. Jonathan Pierce. Is he in tonight?" The clerk looked up, surprised. "Mr. Pierce, sir?" He flipped through the ledger. "I don't think we have anyone by that name." Poirot frowned. "You are sure? The name is on the suitcase in that room." The young man paled slightly. "Room 16 has been empty for weeks, sir. We haven't let it out since August." Poirot stared at him. "Empty?" "Yes, sir." The clerk forced a smile. "Perhaps you're mistaken. Maybe you saw the wrong door." But Poirot did not mistake things. Not ever. "No," he said softly. "I do not believe I am." He walked back upstairs, the creak of the floorboards echoing like whispers. He stopped again outside room 16. The door was still closed. He tried the handle. Locked. It hadn't been locked before. He stood there for a long time, listening, but all he heard was the slow rhythm of the sea, far below, and the faint ticking of a clock somewhere down the hall. That night, Poirot slept little. In the early hours, he heard footsteps outside his door. Slow, careful. They stopped right in front of room 17. He waited, breath held. Then, a key turned, a soft click. Room 16's door opened. Poirot rose silently, walked to his door, and looked through the crack. The corridor was empty, but light spilled faintly from the next room. Someone was inside. He waited until dawn before knocking again. This time, the door was firmly locked. No answer came. No sound at all. When he asked the housekeeper later, she looked puzzled. "Room 16, she said. "That one's been locked for months. The owner keeps it that way. Some business with a guest who left and never returned." Poirot felt the cold rise up his spine. "Never returned?" "That's right, sir. Checked in one night, left the next morning, so he thought. But his things were still there when we cleaned the room. We tried to reach him, but nothing. Then the police came. Said there was no trace of him anywhere." Poirot nodded slowly. "And his name?" The woman frowned, searching her memory. "Pierce, I think. Jonathan Pierce." Poirot looked up toward the second floor. The door to room 16 stood perfectly still in the morning light. But behind it, he could feel something watching, waiting. He adjusted his tie, the old precision returning to his movements. Whatever rest he had come for was over. The case had found him, as it always did. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. "It seems Monsieur Pierce never checked out." Outside, the sea roared louder, as if in agreement. The wind carried the faint sound of a door closing somewhere above. And Poirot, standing in the quiet lobby of the Sea Cliff Hotel, felt the beginning of a story that would not end until he uncovered the truth behind the room that should have been empty. Chapter 2. The Man Who Wasn't There. The morning light came weakly through the hotel windows, filtered by sea mist and salt. It gave the corridors a washed-out, dreamlike quality, as though the building itself were uncertain whether it belonged to the living or the dead. Poirot descended the staircase with slow precision. His polished shoes made no sound on the old red carpet. The lobby was nearly empty, except for the sound of the sea wind pressing against the glass doors. The receptionist was there again, the same pale young man from the night before. His name, Tag, read Daniel. "Good morning, sir," Daniel said nervously. "I trust you slept well." Poirot gave him a measured look. "I did not," he replied simply. "Tell me again, Daniel. You're certain that room 16 is unoccupied?" "Yes, sir. Quite certain. We haven't had anyone stay there for months." Poirot tilted his head slightly. And yet last night, the door was unlocked. There was luggage inside, a name tag, coffee still in the cup. Daniel's smile faltered. That's impossible, sir. Poirot stepped closer. And yet it is true. Someone was in that room last night. Or he paused, his voice lowering something. The boy's eyes widened. Do you mean? Poirot raised a hand gently. I do not believe in ghosts, my friend. Only in people who wish others to believe in them. He turned toward the sitting room, where a few guests lingered over breakfast. The woman who always sat by the fire was there again. Her dark hair was pinned neatly, and her face was pale, almost too pale. She held a cup of tea she never seemed to drink. Poirot approached her quietly. Good morning, madam, he said politely. I am sorry to intrude. May I sit? She looked up. Her eyes were sharp, clear gray. Of course, she said softly. You're the gentleman from London, aren't you? I am indeed. And you are? Evelyn Ross, she replied. I've been staying here for several weeks. I find the sea rather calming. Poirot smiled faintly. And yet, I suspect you do not sleep well. Her eyes flickered, surprised. Why would you say that? Because, Poirot said, you sit here every morning before dawn. That tells me that you, too, have heard the footsteps in the corridor. Her hand froze on the cup. The china rattled faintly. After a moment, she said, You've heard them, too? Yes, just outside my room. Room 17. Her expression darkened. I'm in room 15. Poirot nodded slowly. Then between us lies 16, the room that should be empty. She looked around, as if the walls themselves might be listening. You shouldn't talk about that room, she whispered. Not here. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. Why not? Because, she said, the last person who did disappeared. There was a silence between them, long, tense, heavy. Poirot waited, letting her gather the courage to speak. She continued in a low voice. It was in August. A man arrived late one evening. Quiet, polite. Said his name was Jonathan Pierce. He kept to himself, always reading in the lounge, never speaking to anyone. But one morning he was gone. His suitcase still in his room. The bed untouched. The door locked from the inside. Poirot leaned forward. And what did the police conclude? They said he must have gone out early and fallen from the cliffs, she said. But they never found a body. Poirot's gaze drifted toward the fog-covered windows. No body, no certainty. Evelyn looked down at her hands. The strange thing is, sometimes at night, I hear a knock on my wall. From his side, Poirot's voice softened. From room 16? She nodded. He stood slowly. Madam, I thank you. You have told me much. As he turned to leave, she reached out, her hand trembling. Be careful, Mr. Poirot. Whatever is in that room, it doesn't want to be found. Poirot paused, then smiled faintly. Then it has chosen the wrong hotel, Madame Ross. Later that morning, Poirot went to speak with the housekeeper again. Mrs. Finch was a stout woman with kind eyes, but when he mentioned room 16, the color drained from her face. I told the manager we should seal it off entirely, she muttered. It's cursed, that room. Poirot remained calm. Cursed, madam? Or merely misused? She shook her head. We've had noises, lights, windows open on their own. One of the maids swears she saw someone standing at the window one night, but when we went up, the room was empty. Poirot examined her carefully. And the luggage that remains there, what has become of it? The manager had it stored in the attic, she said. Said it was bad for business having a dead man's things lying about. Poirot smiled slightly. Perhaps he was right, but it may now be good for truth. He asked to see the attic. The attic of the Sea Cliff Hotel was a forgotten world of dust and shadows. The air smelled of salt and age. Old furniture, paintings, broken trunks, and cracked mirrors filled the narrow space beneath the sloping roof. Mrs. Finch pointed toward a corner. That's it there, sir, Mr. Pierce's case. Hasn't been touched since they took it up. Poirot knelt beside it. The leather was worn, the tag still attached. He examined the lock. Unbroken. He opened it gently. Inside were clothes, neatly folded, a shaving kit, a small Bible, and a bundle of papers tied with string. He untied them carefully. Letters. Dozens of them. Each addressed to Jonathan Pierce, but all unsigned. Poirot read one. You promised it would end here. Do not make me remind you what is at stake. Another. If you fail, we both fall. You cannot hide behind the sea forever. Poirot's brow furrowed. These were not love letters. These were threats. He turned to Mrs. Finch. Do you know who might have written these? She shook her head quickly. No, sir. But there was a woman here around that time. A Mrs. Ross, I think. Stayed only a few days. She left in quite a hurry. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Ross. Evelyn Ross. Mrs. Finch frowned. I believe that was the name, yes. Poirot stood slowly, the papers in his hand. Merci, madame. He caught himself. No French. Thank you. That will be all. As he descended the attic stairs, his mind worked rapidly. Evelyn Ross had been here when Jonathan Pierce vanished. She had heard the noises, claimed to fear the room. Yet she had never told him she'd known the man personally. Why? That evening, as the fog rolled in again from the sea, Poirot returned to the second floor. The hallway felt different now, tense, aware. He stopped outside room 16. The door was locked, but the faint sound of movement came from inside. A soft dragging sound, then a quiet thump. Poirot pressed his ear against the door. Mr. Pierce, he said gently. Are you there? Silence. Then a whisper, so faint he almost doubted it. Yes. Poirot stepped back. His pulse quickened. Can you open the door? No reply. He turned the handle. Locked. He knocked again. Mr. Pierce, I am here to help you. Nothing. He waited another moment, then turned sharply and walked back down the hall. He went straight to the front desk. Daniel, he said firmly, give me the master key. The clerk hesitated. Sir, I can't. Poirot's voice was calm, but there was no room for refusal. If a man is in danger, we must not delay. Reluctantly, Daniel handed over the key. Poirot returned upstairs. He slipped the key into the lock, turned it slowly, and pushed the door open. The room was empty, exactly as it had been before. The suitcase gone, the desk bare. No sign that anyone had been there, except for one thing. On the bed lay a single photograph. It showed a man standing by the sea, smiling faintly. The name Jonathan Pierce was written on the back, along with a date. October 28th. Yesterday. Poirot stared at it for a long moment, then looked toward the window. The sea crashed against the rocks below, endless and cold. Someone was playing a game here, a game of fear and illusion. But to what end? He closed the doors softly behind him and whispered, Whoever you are, my friend, you have returned, and you have chosen to make your presence known. As he turned to leave, he felt something brush past his leg, a faint gust of cold air, though the window was shut. Behind him, the door creaked. Then slowly, on its own, it closed. Poirot stood still in the hallway, the photo still in his hand. The name written there seemed to whisper through the silence. Jonathan Pierce, the guest who never checked out. Chapter 3. The Woman by the Fire. The next morning broke gray and heavy, the sea swallowing the light before it could touch the cliffs. The hotel's windows trembled against the wind, and somewhere deep in the building, a door creaked open on its own. Poirot sat in the dining room, untouched breakfast before him, eyes fixed on the flames in the nearby fireplace. He was not watching the fire itself, but the reflection of Evelyn Ross in its flicker. She sat at her usual place, hands folded neatly in her lap, a book unopened on the table beside her. To anyone else, she looked calm, distant perhaps, but harmless. To Poirot, she looked like a question that had learned how to wear a human face. When she finally met his eyes, she gave a polite smile. Another restless night, Mr. Poirot? Poirot nodded slightly. It seems the sea does not wish to let me sleep. Nor, it appears, does your Mr. Pierce. She lowered her gaze. So you found something? I found much, Poirot replied evenly. Letters in the attic. Written to him, by someone who knew him well. Someone who feared exposure. She said nothing. Poirot leaned forward. Why did you not tell me you knew Jonathan Pierce? Her hands tightened slightly. Because knowing him only brought trouble. You were more than acquaintances, Poirot said softly. You were connected. Those letters, they were written by you. Evelyn's eyes snapped up. For a moment, the fire reflected in them like two shards of glass. You went through his belongings? I examined the evidence, Poirot said calmly. A man vanishes, his room locked from the inside, his name unspoken for months. And yet, you remain here, at the same hotel. Watching, listening, waiting. What? Evelyn looked away, toward the window where the mist blurred the horizon. Because, she said quietly, he promised to come back. Poirot frowned. To come back. She nodded. Jonathan Pierce was not the man everyone thought he was. He was investigating something that happened here long before he arrived. He said the hotel was hiding a crime. He said he could prove it. And what did he find? I don't know, she whispered. But the night before he disappeared, he came to me. He said, if I'm not here tomorrow, you'll know why. Then he walked out of my room, and I never saw him again. Poirot studied her closely. There was fear in her voice, yes, but also guilt. And yet you stayed. I stayed, she said, because I needed to see if he'd return. I hear him sometimes at night. The footsteps. The knock. It's him. It has to be. Poirot's eyes softened. Or someone wants you to believe it is. He rose from his chair, buttoning his jacket. Madam, I must ask that you accompany me upstairs. She hesitated. What? Because if your Mr. Pierce is still here, in any sense of the word, it is time we meet him face to face. The second floor was silent except for the steady moan of wind against the windows. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching into pale distance. They stopped before room 16, the key still heavy in Poirot's pocket. Madam, he said quietly, what you are about to see may be unpleasant. You are certain you wish to proceed? Evelyn nodded. I'm not afraid. Poirot unlocked the door. The room was dim, lit only by the gray light from the window. The furniture stood, as before, motionless and expectant. But now there was something new. On the desk lay a single page of paper, freshly torn from a notebook. Written across it, in bold black ink. You shouldn't have come back, Evelyn. She gasped. That wasn't here yesterday. Poirot stepped forward, examining the ink. Still wet. Then someone was here only moments ago. He turned, scanning the room. The air felt heavy, charged. The smell of salt and old coffee lingered. Poirot's gaze drifted toward the wardrobe. The door stood slightly ajar. He crossed the floor slowly, his hand steady, and pulled it open. Nothing but coats and an old umbrella. Then, faintly, he heard it, the sound of footsteps above, in the ceiling. He looked up. The attic. Stay here, he said firmly. No, Evelyn Guisperth. I'm coming with you. Poirot did not argue. Together they went into the hall, climbed the narrow staircase at the end of the corridor, and reached the attic door. It was open. The space beyond was dim, filled with dust and the smell of damp wood. The single window at the far end let in a sliver of cold light. Poirot stepped inside, each movement deliberate. Mr. Pierce, he said softly, if you are here, it is time to make yourself known. No answer. Then Evelyn pointed. There, in the corner, behind an old trunk, something moved, a shadow, slight but certain. Poirot approached slowly. Come out, he said. A man stepped forward, his face pale, his clothes dusty, his eyes hollow. Jonathan Pierce, Poirot said quietly. The man stared back at him, expressionless. Why do you know my name? Because, Poirot said, I found your letters. And your photograph. You were reported missing. Pierce looked at Evelyn. She froze where she stood. You told him, Pierce said coldly. You told him everything. Evelyn shook her head. Jonathan, please, I thought you were dead. I should have been, he said. His voice was dry, distant. But they wouldn't let me go. Poirot watched silently. Who is they? Pierce looked around, as though expecting someone to appear. The owners of this place. The Sea Cliff Hotel. I was sent here to investigate an insurance fraud, a series of disappearances. But when I found what really happened, they tried to silence me. Evelyn took a step forward. What did you find? Pierce's gaze hardened. Bodies, hidden under the cliffs. Guests who checked in under false names. People who knew too much. They were all buried where the sea could take them eventually. Poirot's face remained calm, but his mind raced. And you? I survived because I hid, Pierce said. I stayed in the walls, in the attic, waiting for them to leave. But they never did. Evelyn's voice trembled. Jonathan, you've been here all this time? He nodded slowly. They thought I was gone. I'll let them believe it. But the hotel is cursed now. It remembers. Poirot studied the man carefully. His eyes were too wild, too haunted. And the letters on the desk? The noises? You made them, did you not? Pierce looked away. I wanted her to leave. I wanted everyone to leave. No one should stay here. It's not safe. Because of what happened? Poirot asked. Pierce didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the small window. The tide is coming in, he said softly. It always comes for the truth. Poirot stepped closer. Mr. Pierce, you're no longer alone. Whatever has happened here, we will bring it into the light. Pierce's voice cracked. You can't. You don't understand. They're still here. Poirot frowned. Who? Pierce turned sharply, his eyes wide. The owners. The ones who built this hotel. They never left. At that moment, the attic door slammed shut behind them. Evelyn screamed. Poirot spun around. No one there. The light flickered. Dust fell from the beams above. Then, from below, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps climbing the stairs. Slow, deliberate, heavy. Pierce backed away. It's them, he whispered. Poirot grabbed the handle. The door would not open. Evelyn, stay behind me, he said calmly. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and stopped. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. It was Daniel, the receptionist. His face pale, his hands shaking. Sir, he said breathlessly, you need to come downstairs. There's been an accident. Poirot stepped forward, his mind still racing. What kind of accident? Daniel swallowed hard. The manager, Mr. Hensley. We found him by the cliffs. He's dead. Evelyn gasped. Pierce stared at the floor, his voice a whisper. It's starting again. Poirot looked between them. Evelyn trembling, Pierce fading into shadow, Daniel pale as the fog outside, and said quietly, Then, my friends, it appears that the Sea Cliff Hotel has claimed another guest. Chapter 4. The Truth Beneath the Tide. The storm came in before dawn. Waves hammered the cliffs, the rain cutting sideways through the air like glass. The Sea Cliff Hotel groaned against it, its old bones shuddering beneath each gust. Poirot stood by the window of room 17, the curtains breathing in and out with the wind. Below, the sea churned black and endless. Behind him, the hotel was still, too still. Only hours ago, the manager's body had been found at the edge of the cliffs. The police had taken him away under tarps and silence. And now the guests whispered in corners. The name Sea Cliff had become a curse. Poirot waited until the hall lights dimmed to their night setting. Then he left his room. He went first to the office behind the reception desk, the manager's private study. The door was locked, but Daniel had given him the key. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp paper and stale tobacco. Files filled the desk drawers. Ledgers. Old hotel records. Poirot lit a small lamp and began to read. Names. Dates. Amounts. All ordinary until one column caught his eye, special accounts. Each marked with the same initials. J.P. Jonathan Pierce. Yet the dates went back years, long before Pierce had ever stayed at the hotel. Poirot turned another page. At the bottom, one entry was circled in red pencil. August 19th, Evelyn Ross, cleared. He stared at it for a long moment, the rain drumming harder against the glass. Then, quietly, he said, So that is how it is. He found Evelyn in the lounge, her face pale in the firelight. The sea outside roared louder now, as though trying to break through the walls. Madam, he said gently, I have questions, and I would appreciate the truth this time. She looked up, her voice a whisper. I've told you everything I know. Poirot sat across from her. Then allow me to tell you what I know. You and Mr. Pierce were not simply guests. You were partners in deception. Her eyes widened. You came here to expose fraud? Yes, Poirot continued. But you discovered an easier way to join it. The hotel was built on insurance money. Fires, disappearances, accidents. All carefully arranged. You were both part of it. Evelyn shook her head. No, you're wrong. Poirot's tone remained calm. Pierce's name appears in every secret account. And yours, marked as cleared. You took your share and tried to walk away. But he did not. He wanted to expose it at last. And for that, someone had to silence him. Her hands trembled. I didn't kill him. No, Poirot said softly. But you know who did. She looked into the fire, tears shining in her eyes. "It was Hensley," she whispered. "He caught Jonathan searching the ledgers. They fought. Jonathan fell, or was pushed. Hensley said he would take care of it. I should have told the police, but he said they'd blame me too. So I stayed. I stayed because I couldn't leave him behind." Poirot's gaze softened. "You stayed in the place of your guilt." She nodded faintly. "And the noises?" Poirot asked. "The messages, the paper left on the desk." "I thought it was him," she said. "I wanted it to be him." Poirot's eyes darkened. "It was not him. It was Daniel." Evelyn stared. "Daniel?" Poirot stood, motioning toward the corridor. "He told me the manager was dead before the police even knew. He gave me the key to that room far too quickly. He knew every sound, every movement inside this hotel. Because he was watching. They found Daniel at the reception desk, head down, hands folded. He looked up when Poirot approached, eyes tired but sharp. "You know," Daniel said quietly. "Yes," Poirot replied. "I know everything." Daniel sighed. "Then you know why I did it. Tell me." He looked toward the windows, where lightning flashed over the sea. "This hotel was my family's. Hensley bought it for almost nothing after my father died. My mother worked here until the night she fell from those cliffs. An accident, they said. But it wasn't. He killed her. I couldn't prove it. But Pierce could. And so," Poirot said softly, "you brought Pierce back." Daniel nodded. "He was alive. Barely. Hensley had left him for dead near the cliffs. I found him and hid him in the attic. We planned to wait until the storm, when no one could stop us from leaving with the records. But he changed his mind. Said he wanted to confess everything. I tried to stop him. He looked down. He ran into the storm. I never saw him again." Poirot's voice was almost kind. "You tried to frighten Miss Ross away, to protect the secret. You made the hotel speak in footsteps and whispers. But truth, my friend, always finds its own voice." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe now it's done." Poirot looked at him for a long moment, then turned to Evelyn. "Call the police. Tell them everything. It is over." But it was not. The next morning, when the storm finally broke, they searched the beach below the cliffs. And there, among the rocks and seaweed, they found what the tide had hidden for months, the remains of Jonathan Pierce. In his pocket was a notebook sealed in wax. Inside were pages of evidence, accounts, names, signatures, enough to destroy the hotel's false empire forever. Poirot stood beside the body as the sun rose through the thinning clouds. The sea was calm now, as if the truth had satisfied it. Evelyn watched silently, the wind tugging at her coat. "Will you tell them everything?" she asked. Poirot looked out toward the horizon. "The truth, madam, is like the tide. It may retreat, but it always returns." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. As the police carried the body away, Poirot walked back toward the crumbling hotel. The sign above the door swung loosely in the wind, its paint peeling away. "Sea Cliff Hotel." He paused at the threshold and whispered, "Perhaps now, at last, every guest is checked out." That night, long after everyone had gone, a single light burned in room 16. The door was open. The wind moved through gently, lifting the curtains like ghostly hands. On the desk lay a single key, tarnished but waiting. Poirot looked at it once, then closed the door behind him. And as he walked away, the sea outside whispered one final name, carried on the wind. Jonathan Pierce. If you enjoyed this mystery, the guest who never checked out, stay with us for the next Poirot case. Every clue hides another story, and every story hides another lie. Subscribe now and step once more into the shadows, because the next secret is already waiting.